But right now, a guy that's done that a number of times and had a great success with FC Edmonton in years past, and also former Canadian men's national team player and head coach Colin Miller joins us right now. Colin, welcome.
Thank you, Anthony. It's great to be back on the show.
Great to have you on, my friend. Great to have you on. I thought of you today, and I thought, let's give Colin a call to get his thoughts on how we build this club from scratch. Let's start with the coaching staff, Colin. Obviously, you've done this. You've built it with some assistants, a goalie coach, and a trainer. How do you go about building this? Are you looking for experience? Are you looking maybe for a first-timer as an assistant and a goalie coach, or a little bit of both? Let's start with the bench.
Well, I think that what I look for, and I was, this is a great example to use. The assistant coach that I inherited at FC Edmonton was a gentleman that's been on your show a few times, Jeff Paulus. And, it's not the norm that you would inherit a staff. It's fairly common, and I've been guilty of being on the receiving end of the coaching staff changes. But anyways, Jeff was relatively new to the professional game. He had done a lot of work at the youth level, but I recognized right away his honesty, his integrity, his opinions on the game, his knowledge of the local area. I thought was very important as well, and he was very easy to get along with. And those were the sort of characteristics that I looked for in an assistant coach, and Jeff fitted that bill very well. So that's the sort of thing that I would look for. Obviously, a knowledge of the game is, of course, second to none. If you can if you can bring in a staff member, or in Jeff's case, he was well aware of the standard in the NASL as well, because he had helped out with the previous coaching staff as well. So I think that you look for that, and experience. Yeah, sometimes you look for experience, but there's also an argument for bringing in a younger, hungry coach that is willing to listen, willing to learn, that has the new upward trends, if you like, because coaching, like everything else in the world, everything is trendy. What is happening now might not be trendy and happening next year. So I think you find someone that suits your balance, something that complements what I can't do, Jeff was able to do. So I'm not a professor, I'm not a genius with a computer. Jeff was very, very good with all the modern training methods in terms of all the electronic gadgetry that goes along with being a coach now in modern football.
Let me ask you this, Colin. I don't know if you've ever done this in hiring an assistant, but I know a lot of head coaches all over North America have told me that they shy away from hiring an assistant that likes to debate, to challenge the head coach, to bring everything out in the open and really force that head coach to be better and better each day. Would you be afraid to do that again? Have you done it? Give us an insight.
Yeah, no, it's exactly what Jeff was like. Jeff was very, very good for me. And the same thing when I was a manager in Scotland with Ali Dawson, who had played for Rangers with me and had played for the Scottish national team, had very, very strong opinions on the game. What the great thing about being an assistant manager, and I've been an assistant manager as well at clubs with the Whitecaps and with the national team, of course, with Holger. It's one thing having an opinion, and I mean, I'm sure you're not using the term forcing an opinion on someone. It's different forcing an opinion on someone and giving someone your opinion. But I welcome that. I don't know everything about the game. I'm not Pep Guardiola or Jose Mourinho, or whatever the case may be. So I welcome all of these things. And there were a number of times when Jeff would have an opinion, as well as the staff that we had in Edmonton, have an opinion out, and you have to be honest enough in your own side, your own self, Anthony, to say, well, yeah, maybe they've got a good point there. Maybe I should be looking at that, because at times we can become very blinkered in professional football and say, no, this is the only way we're going to do it. So I was open to those ideas, and Jeff wasn't forcing things on, and the rest of the guys weren't forcing things on me. Same thing when I was the interim national team coach. The guys I welcomed that opinion all the time, because there's something in those guys' opinion that may change how we do things. And the most important thing is a team. It's not about Colin Miller. It's not about the manager, unless some people, I've seen some managers work, and if they were chocolate, they would eat themselves, Anthony. So I'm afraid I'm not one of those types.
How important is it today? We've seen in the last, let's say, 5 to 7 years, Colin, we just had an analytical and statistical guy on to break down players in minutes played, in goals, in different positions, that how versatile they are. How important is it for you, the head coach, to be on the same page with the president and general manager and looking at certain things? You might like to have a statistician and an analytical guy, or vice versa. The general manager might like that, but you will not like that. How do you guys come to a medium?
Yeah, I think it's a terrific question, Anthony, because of how the game is perceived at the moment. You know, you almost have to be a professor or a Philadelphia lawyer to be a coach nowadays. So I believe that there is a place for all of those statisticians and all the analytical details and so on and so forth. But a lot of times, your eye has to be the final say. Your eye has to be the one, you look at the game, you look at the player that you're interested in signing, or the one that's part of your program, and his day-to-day, his body language, and all these sort of things that come into making a decision whether a player plays or whether he doesn't play. The statistics, yes, they're very important. I don't discount that for a second, Anthony, but that cannot be the be-all and end-all to making a decision on signing a player.
I couldn't agree with you more. So let's build this team on the field. In 2019, we know that CPL will kick off, and they're going to be starting from scratch, from zero. Let's build this team. You've built many teams. Do you start building with, let's say hypothetically, CPL is going to be given 3 to 5 international spots. Do you bring in a couple veterans that have plenty of miles on them, but a lot of game left, that can help out in that locker room with some of the young 16 and 17-year-olds that are going to get a chance? Do you go with a veteran goalkeeper, someone that has been through it all? Or do you give a young guy? Let's build this team. Do you build it with speed? Do you build it with finesse? You build it, Colin.
Well, I tell you, Anthony, you're doing a very good job of it yourself here. I think you should be the next CPL manager. I think you've done a great job. I think it's a bit of all of the above. I think it's finding the balance. Your international spots will be very, very important. We know that. Those players coming in, you're hoping will have had some sort of experience, whether that's in Europe, Central America, doesn't matter. But hopefully that player will be coming to your club or our club with the right mindset. And the right mindset is to be all of what you've just said there, is to be a leader, is to help younger players out, because I'm huge on that. No one could ever discount the impact that FC Edmonton had with its youth and giving the youth a chance in the first team. So I'm huge on that, as you know. But I think that getting those right international slots, that's critical, because it was in Edmonton with the Albert Watson, the Dalford Dice, Tomi Amiobi, Richie Jones when he was fit, Adam Eckersley came in and did a fabulous job for us. So these guys are very, very important, but it's finding the right balance. You want to get someone who's a senior player, who's been a good professional, and is going to still be able to do the business for you on the park, because ultimately that is where you'll be judged.
So, Colin, a year from now, you already know the type of field you'll be playing on, whether it's grass or artificial. You know the type of weather you're going to have in your city across Canada that you're going to play. Are you looking at these ingredients when you're trying to scout and attract players to come to your club? Do you go to Scandinavia? Do you try and take a chance on a South American player, knowing that in Edmonton it's brutally cold still in April, and it's even colder in October? They might not have the success of a player that's played in a Sweden, a Norway, a Finland, on and on. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I think you look at all of that. I think you look at what has, before we would sign a player. And of course, I'm no longer with FC Edmonton. I'm now looking for work. But it's what we would look at is, how injury prone is the player, for instance, because we were training and playing on field turf every day whilst we were in Edmonton. You would look at, trying to do some more research on what the player was like, and sometimes you have to deal with agents who I'm not a big fan of agents, but that's another story. But you're dealing with agents who are going to tell you, yeah, this player is the next Messi, he's going to do this, and sometimes it doesn't work out, even at the top level of the football, that never mind the NASL or the CPL. So you try to do as much homework as you can on each of these players, because you have a dressing room, you have a changing room, where if you bring 2 or 3, the horrible word, cancers into that change room, all of a sudden the dynamic of your club changes. But if you've got a group of people that are focused and want to work together, then you have an opportunity to create something very, very positive, not only for that first team, but for the younger players that are coming through as well. So you do as much due diligence as you can on each of your signings, and for the most part in Edmonton, we were fairly spot on with what we did. We weren't correct all the time, and it wasn't at times even something as simple as, you know, we used to try to get players, Anthony, that were single, because the young guys coming across, they're full of life, full of energy, and wanting to promote themselves and get forward. Whereas if you've signed a married player, all of a sudden your costs in terms of flying a player in, apartments now, and if they've got kids and so on and so forth. Now, there's nothing wrong with being married and having kids. I actually fall into that category. But you look at all sorts of things. Now, if you're bringing a married player into the club and that family has kids, now you're looking at how well the wife settles, how well those kids are settling, are they going to school? So there are so many things that you have to consider before you make a signing of a player. And you know, it's not just as easy. All right, let's put a squad of 23 players together. It's not as easy as some people might think.
That's great insight. I really enjoyed that piece right there about single and being married. Another part that I wanted to discuss with you is this, Colin. Obviously, players have good years and bad years. So how do you go about, analyzing, dissecting, digesting, debating, talking with your staff when you have a bunch of players and maybe a few of them have fallen off in the last couple of years, but early on in their career, they were lighting it up, whether it was on the score sheet or whether it was as a defender. So where do you come to, a common ground there with your coaching staff to say, you know what, I believe in this guy. I've seen him a few years back. I know he's fallen off. Like, how do you go about going through that desert of players to say, yeah, I want to give that individual another shot?
Well, again, it's another great question, Anthony, because, I can speak from experience at FC Edmonton, and also, as a manager in Scotland, and the national team coaches will back me up here as well, where you're giving young guys who have fallen off the radar a little bit, you're giving them an opportunity. Now, for instance, we had Richie Jones in Edmonton for 2 or 3 years with us. Unfortunately, Jonesy picked up a knee injury that ended his career, actually, Anthony. So how I presented FC Edmonton to Jonesy was, I played in the UK for 15, 16 years, Anthony, as you know, and it can become a bit of a rat race. And Jonesy, at one point in his career, he'd spent 5 years, more than that. He'd been at Manchester United. He'd played 5 or 8 first-team games for Manchester United and had fallen away. His career, once he'd left Old Trafford, he had fallen down the divisions, and it was like a lot of players in those lower leagues in England were really fighting against the system all the time, and very, very difficult surroundings. So I presented FC Edmonton as an entirely different way of life to him, and he said it was the best advice that he had ever received. And he was so grateful, and he was like a kid in a candy store when he came to North America. It was the same thing with Albert Watson. It was the same thing with Darryl Fordyce. They had left Belfast, they'd left Linfield. They were both first-team players, and now they were given a new lease of life. And both Darryl and Albert now are Canadian citizens. So it shows you that you not only present the club in the city, but you're presenting a country, the best country in the world, and you're looking at a different way of life than what the guys might be getting back in the UK or Central America, South America. It doesn't matter. There are players that I've worked with that were prepared to take 50% of a pay cut to stay at FC Edmonton or to try to find another club in North America. So it just shows you that it might seem difficult at times, but there are players out there that are desperate to come to Canada to play because it is the way of life, the best country in the world to live.
Lastly, before we let you go, Colin, we really appreciate your time. Let's talk about that mentality of a player and how you go about, deciding if you're going to bring this player on board or not. Because, there might be a couple games you might have to let him sit on the bench. And maybe he's been a starter for 3/4 of the year, but he hasn't brought it the last number of games, and it's a wins-oriented business you're in. Mentally, are you talking to these players, testing them out with certain questions, feeling them out, hearing what their answers are going to be? I mean, I think this is just as important as stats and all this other stuff, because if a player is going to blow up and cause all sorts of problems in the locker room because he's maybe benched a game or two because he honestly hasn't played to the capabilities he can, I think this is important. So how do you go about this, Colin?
You go, in my opinion, my honest and humble opinion, Anthony, you go about it in an honest manner. And if you tell a player the truth, you tell them exactly what you think and you don't fluff over it, then they understand what the environment is at your club. And that comes from that initial phone call or that face-to-face meeting with the player and the agent, of course, because some players won't speak unless their agent pulls the strings for them. But I was always honest with guys, and I told them exactly if they weren't playing well, I told them what they were doing wrong and how they would correct it. And until they did it correctly, they wouldn't be back in the first team. And it didn't matter if it was a seasoned international player or whether it was a young guy coming through from our academy. The standards have to be set from the manager, and that message, of course, has to be very, very consistent. And if I'm saying one harsh thing to one player and being all fluffy and nice with the next player, then the players aren't stupid now. They'll suss things out right away. But I think if you're honest and you've got the team as the most important thing, and of course the well-being of the player, I'd like to think I'm still very much a player's manager, and have a laugh. Hopefully have a very good sense of humour. When you look like this, Anthony, you have to have but I have to have a laugh with the players and the staff and provide that environment. But I will not tolerate cheating. I will not tolerate lack of respect, integrity for the game, all of these things. And if a player doesn't abide by those, and those are club rules, those are from academy all the way through to first team, if they don't toe the line there, and the best example you can use of that is Sir Alex Ferguson, who was Manchester United. There were standards all the way through that club, and we tried to do that, and I believe for the most part we did that at FC Edmonton. Those are the sort of things that I'd be nailing right from the first conversation with that agent or with that player. And if there was any fluff from the agent or any fluff from the player, I wouldn't sign him.
Colin, not too long ago, I had Bob Bradley on the show, and last week from FC Dallas, Technical Director Fernando Clavillo. And listening to you, I could put all three of you in a room and listen to you guys all day, because you're students of the game, and you still want to learn, you still want to get better. And 2019 is not too far away. I'm pretty sure that there's going to be a spot on a bench somewhere on one of those clubs, because if not, shame on them. So again, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. We want to see you back out there sooner than later. But it's important that this league gets off the ground with coaches like you, with Canadian players that are hungry and ready, so we can finally in this country, Colin, smile and hopefully have something that we can be proud of. Again, Colin, thank you, and God bless, and good luck to you as well, my friend.
Thank you, Anthony. It's always a pleasure. And by the way, when you're saying you're hoping I'm on the bench, I'm hoping I'm on the bench as the manager and not making a comeback.
No, hey, listen, I'm sure that someone have you on the bench as a coach. And you could still outplay a lot of people at your age, I'm sure of it, Colin. Listen, thanks again, and hopefully we'll talk to you in the near future as the new head coach of one of those clubs, my friend.
Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate it very much.